Peace. Peace to the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are right now. Hope everybody's doing good, having a good day, night. I want to get on here real quick. I want to talk about something that's been on my mind for a while. And I talk about things that I think should be addressed, things that we should be thinking about and you know, um, acknowledging. And I want to talk about school. I want to talk about school and education, the education system in America, at least in the Western Hemisphere. Um, I think school is an interesting concept. Um, you know, as far as my experience and my uh, years in school were very interesting in a lot of ways. Um, we even to this day, we always hear the slogan. We tell our kids go to school, get good grades, listen to the teacher. Um, all the things associated with school, right? Get A's and B's and do your homework and et cetera, et cetera. Um, as a teacher myself, I've been in the education system, and I've worked as a child care provider. Um, I noticed a lot of things, and even in my experience as a student in the school, uh, as a youngster, I was always proficient in a lot of things. I was always advanced in certain areas like reading and writing, and I had a fascination with science and a lot of things like that. And I think a lot of kids, as children, we have an innate curiosity um, for just in general. We just have a curious, vigorous curiosity, in that's associated with being a child. And I feel like a lot of that gets stifled, and it gets stomped out. School has there's a lot of good things as far as school is concerned. I don't want to make a whole blanket statement about the education system. However, there's a lot of things that are included and excluded from a school curriculum. If you look back, the history of mandated schooling in the United States. I think it was John D. Rockefeller and Horace Mann who comprised and implemented the mandated education system in America, Monday through Friday, 9 to 3, 9 to 5 system. And there's a lot of parallels between school and work. You know, um, in the grand scheme of things, from what I've learned and from my experience, school is nothing more than an indoctrination machine, and it strips away your autonomy and your individuality to a big degree. And school is not the only place where we should be educated. In fact, a lot of our schooling, like I said, most of it is useless as far as I'm concerned. Knowing how to read, write, knowing math, basic addition, subtraction, multiplication. Those are that's like really the foundation of learning. You know what I mean? And like everybody, I always, what is education? What exactly does that mean? It doesn't just take place in a four-wall building. Um, learning takes place everywhere, and I feel like the school system is geared is structured towards to make obedient workers, so we can accept the wage slave system, the wage slave plan, so to speak, and we subscribe to that, you know. And there's a lot of things that school has a direct a correlation to our connection with money and our views and our it shapes our views and you know, I notice me and a lot of other, you know, a lot of people, we have we have a lot of misconceptions and a lot of misinformation, you know, regarding money and things like that. But my point of this video is to shine some light, you know, and I don't want to sound cliche or like say be redundant, say regurgitate things that's already been said, but as far as my experience and what I've learned in school, I'm unlearning a lot of things at this point in my life. I'm unlearning a lot of things, and I'm starting to realize the elephant in the living room, in a way where, you know, like I was saying, the parallels between school and even the prison system. You know, when the bell rings, you got to arrive when the bell rings. You have to respond when the bell rings, and you get a certain amount of time doing certain things. So, you know, it's a lot of similarities between school and the prison system and the job, you know, the work field or the work level, so to speak, for lack of a better word. You know, and it primes you. It primes you to be a productive worker ant. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being an employee. Like, if you want to work a job, that's fine. You know, I commend people that work jobs. But the issue with school, I didn't learn financial skills. I didn't learn. I learned a lot of nonsense, like Shakespeare and like stupid shit like that didn't really, you know, algebra and like, you know, stuff like that. Cat Williams made a good point when one of his stand-ups, he was like, you know, what did he say? He said math was easy when it was just numbers, but then when you included letters in the equation, I lost my shit, and I can't confuse me. You know, even spelling. You know, he said the teacher that told him to spell knife, and he sounded the word out, and he spelled the word N-I-F-E, and the teacher said, no, that's incorrect. The proper spelling is K-N-I-F-E. He said, well, she said the K is silent. He said, well, take the quiet shit out because it's confusing me. And you know, that's a really good point. George Carlin, he's another outstanding comedian, rest in peace. You know, a lot of his stand-up was on point too, but you know, so like, yeah, my whole point is that you know, learning and education takes place everywhere, you know. And even as a child care provider, you know, I never really, and that's when I began, at least, I didn't really quite understand the importance of free play and like just outdoor exploration and unstructured activities where their kids could just explore and really harness their own autonomy and their own individuality. Learning takes place everywhere, people, every day of our lives. You know, and I know a lot of people that homeschool, and a major objection is people say, well, how do kids, you got to get socialized. They got to be around other people and other kids. Like, there's people that exist everywhere. There's children that exist everywhere, people. They're not just in the school system. And based on a lot of things that I've seen witnessed taking place in the public schools and the private, that's another misconception. People think that there's a major difference between like private school and public school. There might be some differences. I don't know specifically, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, you still got to respond when the bell rings. You still have to get good grades. You still got to get A's and B's and get certain scores. And if you don't get A's and B's, you're not smart. You're not adequate. You're not sufficient. So you're abnormal. But again, if you're a parent, you understand. A child educated at school only is not an educated child. And that's very true. Very, very true, folks. Literacy is on the decline. I don't know what the numbers are now as far as our statistics in terms of like literacy and math and so on and so forth. But I know we definitely, it's not something to be proud of. I know that much. Teach your kids things at home and allow them to be, let your kids get dirty and learn. Just be kids, We setting these kids up with too much pressure, and then it's like, what are we setting them up for? What are they ultimately achieving? What are they really achieving? We push them to play sports or do this and that, and the average person is not very astute. We're not very astute in various ways, and we put all this emphasis on school, get good grades, go to school, listen to your teacher, and a lot of the things I've seen on going through the airwaves is it's a lot of buffoonery and a lot of bullshit going on, folks. I don't know what a lot of these kids are learning, but as far as my experience, I was in special ed when I was in elementary school. I was on medication. I was diagnosed with ADD and ADHD. And, I come to the conclusion now as an adult that I was just bored out of my damn mind. I was fucking bored with shit. I hated school. Especially when I got to like middle school and high school and I dropped out. I hated school. I really did. I didn't want to go. I wasn't engaged. I wasn't really, I hated it. I dropped out when I was almost 21 years old. I dropped out of high school. I eventually got my GED and I enrolled in some early childhood development classes, and I'm a barber, but I hated school. I hated it. Just the thought of like, school is not, it just wasn't for me. It's just not, I just couldn't fit in. I wasn't the typical studious type of I hated it. I didn't do homework. The year I dropped out, I barely attended class. I would skip, leave, get out, leave when I felt like it. I didn't give a shit about school. But it was boring. That's the thing I'm trying to convey also, is like, school is boring, it's monotonous, it's like more, it felt like a chore and more something that I didn't, really enjoy doing. But I was, again, I was proficient in certain things like reading and writing. I always had a fascination for science and like earth space science. What makes the grass green? Small microorganisms. I always had a fascination for things like that. School in itself, I hated it. So don't push your kids to follow a path or a certain trajectory that's really not gonna, be of significance as an adult. Foster your kids' individuality and be an educator at home too. Stop putting all this pressure on teachers and thinking that learning is only in a school, in a classroom, because that's foolish. That's silly. Learn that education could be any and everything. Nah, sorry, man. I don't smoke. So, I'm trying to, I make these videos to share my experiences and what's the word I'm looking for? My personal experiences and learn, compare and contrast certain things and be like, okay, this is really what it is. Everything is not what it seems like. I think the education system is overrated. It's overrated, and we've been programmed with like whole lives and half truths, inaccuracies. Go to work, get a good job, but what are we really learning though? Like, I worked a job my whole damn near half my life. I never learned how to really save. I never learned how to have my money work for me. See, rather than me work for my money. These are concepts that we don't really learn, folks. Like, we have this attitude of like, well, I'm only, rich people are like weird and greedy, and which is some of it's true. A lot of rich people are greedy and selfish, but that got nothing to do with me. That's got nothing to do with my code of conduct or my ethics. I don't give a shit if supposedly so and so is a crooked, corrupted individual. Like, let me rephrase that. I care, but that doesn't negate how I move or what my personal goals are. Like, we have such a bad, we have such a screwed up idea of money. Like, money is a tool. Money is a tool, folks. Money is a vessel. When money gives you opportunities, money gives you options. And again, I'm kind of going on side swerving here, but it's all in relation to what I'm trying to convey as far as school and like education. Learning and education never stops. And I think that's another misconception too. Like, when you graduate, people graduate and they think that they have nothing more to learn, or they have no more growth to make, certain things to develop on, and that's part of the equation too. So, with that being said, look up some research. Do some research on mandated education in America and how the school system and the education system came into existence. Because prior to that, as far as what I've researched and gathered, schooling wasn't a requirement, and until I believe it was 1913, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to say things that are inaccurate, or spread my opinion, but in a nutshell, the school education system was not intended for our benefit, folks. It wasn't meant to create independent thought. It was meant to create working ants, smart enough to perform your task and dumb enough to question the status quo. We work our lives away, and we help others get rich and achieve their dreams, or we abandon our dreams in the process. We neglect we neglect ourselves and our own families in the process. And it's like I said, we're obedient and subservient to others and to our employers, but what are we doing for ourselves? What are you really doing for your own benefit to advance your family and your offspring? You know, so a lot of this is directly related. It's all intertwined. But I just want to get on here and say that real quick, and I got some things to take care of. Got some errands to run. But anyway, just want to get on here and say that real quick. Peace, much love. Learn something new every day. Learn a new word. Learn a new concept. Something that could benefit you and your family. Because without knowledge and awareness, I said before, as cliche as it is, our ignorance is their benefit, and that's true. Whether you refuse to acknowledge it or you wish to refute it, it's very true, people. Our ignorance is their profit. So everything starts in here, and then everything else manifests. Peace, much love. Stay safe. Stay hydrated. Be the best you.